I think there's a real art in coaches that can know the detail and have knowledge in an area, but be able to deliver it in a really simplistic way. I think the world we live in now, everything is fast, everything's intense. Everybody wants everything right now or as of yesterday. We have a new generation of players. I mean, we spoke about it a little bit, Gary, around authenticity. And I think we're losing that a little bit in football of knowing ourselves, knowing our strengths, knowing our areas for improvement, knowing what we believe in. And I think it's so easy to be swayed by that. Players see through when you're not being yourself and you're not being authentic. And I think people appreciate it more when you are honest and you're true to yourself. And I think the world of football, we do need to have an understanding in every corner now. I think coaching courses aren't doing enough to support the human and the person without it being in a formal tick box way.
Hello, coaches. Welcome back to another Modern Soccer Coach podcast interview. Today, we are joined by Natalie Henderson, assistant coach of the Canadian senior team, former England under-17 head coach, and also has worked at Newcastle United Men's Academy. And if that wasn't enough, Natalie is doing some outstanding work in terms of individual coach support. So that's where we go today, talking about the challenges of coaching, talking about the demands of knowing so much in so many departments, and then moving towards the support aspect of a coach. How do you get better as a coach? How do you measure your progress as a coach? Where do you find help as a coach? Natalie's doing some brilliant work there. I'll put her information below. Please feel free to check that out. Also, if you're looking for some more content, please check out Modern Soccer Coach Insider, the platform that has all our webinars, tons of session resources, and weekly content as well. Please check that out. Please also like, please subscribe. Thank you so much for the support. Here is Natalie. Enjoy. Natalie, thank you for joining me today on the Modern Soccer Coach podcast. Back again 5 years later. Here we go.
And no, it's been a while. Time really does pass very quickly, but I'm happy to be back. So thanks for having me.
Where do I start this? The piece that I get quite a bit, and I'm seeing today, is that coaching is becoming the pathway of coaching. Uh, I guess is a little bit more clear with people being, going to university or going into clubs younger and saying, "Listen, I want to be a professional coach. Or I want to work at the highest level." Um, but if I have had a conversation with one person over the last 5 years, I've had a conversation with 100 that have said, "God, they don't teach you this at coaching courses." But I want to start with a nice, easy one for you. Do you think coaching is harder now than it ever has been with all the information noise and the way the world is?
It is a big first question. I think for me, it would be difficult for me to comment on what coaching was like back then because I can only comment on my experience. And I guess I don't want to sit here and go, oh, yeah, it's much harder nowadays. For somebody who, back then with a lot more experience and a lot more age on my side might say, actually, it was a lot more difficult back then. So I guess I can only comment on my experience so far, and I guess like the 19 years of my career of coaching. Um, but I think it's difficult. Yeah. I think the world we live in now, everything is fast, everything's intense. Everybody wants everything right now or as of yesterday. We have a new generation of players, a different way of learning. We have a lot of research that comes out regularly, and some research then contradicts other research. And you think you get to grips with one area, then something else gets released, and you think, oh, I was wrong about that, and I need to learn, more about that area. We have data, we have trends of the game. The game is changing. So do I think it's difficult? Yes, I think coaching is very difficult, and I think it's really, really hard nowadays to keep up with it.
It's a great point that about the the information sometimes contradicting other research, and that, like, I feel as if there was a freshness about social media in particular when it started, and everyone started getting on Twitter and sharing stuff, and there did seem to be a kind of line in the sand between modern coaching and old school, and everyone was trying to get better and evolve. And now it does seem that there's just so many angles now come at it where there is no right or wrong way, which in one hand is a that's kind of refreshing, just keeps you thinking, keeps you moving. But on the other hand, I think people need something to hang on to a little bit, or at least to build around. I mean, how do you see that space with just so much information? Information changes every week in terms of the research articles. Like, how do you advise people, or how do you keep up with it and stay consistent?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult. I think nowadays we are overloaded with information through social media. I think, like I said, there can be research that then contradicts other research or messages that contradict other messages. You have a top manager saying one way is the best way of playing football, and then another manager saying the complete opposite. Um, so I think as coaches, I think you almost need to strip it back. I think you can get really lost in it, and myself included has certainly got lost in it and can find yourself chopping and changing between things. And I think, I mean, we spoke about it a little bit, Gary, around authenticity. And I think we're losing that a little bit in football of knowing ourselves, knowing our strengths, knowing our areas for improvement, knowing what we believe in. And I think it's so easy to be swayed by that. If you see one thing on social media and you think, oh, I'm going to get my team to do that. And you see something a week after, oh, I'm going to get my team to do that now. And it can become very contradictory and we can confuse players and confuse ourselves. Um, but I also think it's really exciting, right? That we have all this information, knowledge accessible to us, which is not something we had a long time ago. So I think there's a real balance of not being swamped in it, but also using it to our advantage. Um, I think there's a real art in coaches that can know the detail and have knowledge in an area, but be able to deliver it in a really simplistic way. I think that is something that I really truly believe in is you have to know the detail as a coach, but if you can't explain it in a simplistic way to players or a learnable way, then they get lost in it and you get lost in it. Um, so yeah, sometimes I think we need to stick to basics and strip it back a little bit. And the other bit is like we can't be an expert in everything. And I fell into this trap of trying to be an expert in all sorts of different areas. Certainly as a head coach for England, I felt like I needed to be an expert in everything. Um, Now I'm never going to have more knowledge than the doctor in the England camp. So you almost have to accept that and trust the people around you to have knowledge and their expertise. And yes, you need an understanding in it, certainly as a coach. Um, but I think being comfortable with you don't need to know everything and just get really good at the things you need to be good at. So that's a really long-winded answer, but I think, yeah, I think it's complex.
Oh, there's a couple of things there I really like. The piece there on, well, authenticity was one of the first things you said, but then also, like, I wonder how much the pressure for a coach to think that they know or perceive that they do know everything almost creates a bit of a defense mechanism, or a little bit of insecurity, and then that backs or impacts the authenticity where you're actually trying to perceive a knowledge that's something I would like to see just not challenged, because I think I understand where it comes from, but this, like, I feel really, I feel a level of sympathy when I go watch coaches and they don't really, they're holding back that personality a little bit on the pitch, because ultimately it's, I still feel that could be the difference maker in society today, where the communication piece is almost more valuable than it ever has been.
Yeah, and I think that's the bit we maybe forget these days is actually the coach and the personality and the character and the environment you create is crucial. And I think we are losing authenticity, and I think there's a number of reasons why. I think football and sport in general is a very judgmental environment, right? You're constantly being judged, and same with players. I think we judge every action of a player on and off the pitch. We're analyzing them constantly, and they might not know it, but as staff, you're watching their every move, and I feel like we feel like that as coaches as well. And therefore, because you feeling like you're being judged or you know you're being judged, you're almost holding back and you're trying to protect yourself. and you're trying to cover up those insecurities and cover up mistakes. And I think, I mean, it's the classic Brené Brown, right? Of like, we need to be comfortable being vulnerable and knowing that we're human and we have mistakes in us and we're not perfect and we have insecurities. And I think the best individuals are the ones that display them and show them and aren't afraid of that and can still be themselves and show their personalities, knowing, yeah, I'm not perfect, but here I am and I'm trying and I'm giving it a good go. Um, and I always hate that, right, with coaches. Like when a coach puts a session on, I always feel sorry for them, a bit like what you're saying. If when other coaches watch, like no matter what you do, somebody will have an opinion on it. And somebody will say, oh, well, I wouldn't have done that rondo like that, or I wouldn't have put the goals there, or I would have changed that practice and I would have done it like this. And there's like a million ways you can do things, right? There's a million practices out there. Um, but I think people always having an opinion makes people feel a little bit threatened, and therefore they put their guard up and they're not themselves, which I think is the really sad part of football.
Yes, yes. I'm actually just looking up. It was on YouTube and I can't find it. I was watching, here it is. Diary of a CEO this week had secret agent. She's been on like 4 times. She's an FBI agent. She's unbelievable. And this week she was done about. I'll read out the title. Authenticity is quietly sabotaging you, and it's like don't bring your true self to work because of the judgment, the criticism. Manage that, hold that back, and actually, Harvard Business Review did a webinar on this last week as well. That was don't be authentic in the workplace. And I I always just find topics interesting of when I see them, and it's just my own bubble of algorithms, so it's not as if it's a trend in the world. But I do wonder if like I think football is the most judgmental space in the because of the short termism of results. And then every single day you've got players looking at you going, all right, show us something today sometime, and you're very, very hard to manage that there.
Yeah, very. And they expect you to have all the answers, right? And I think we need to be comfortable that we can admit we don't have all the answers. Like we're here as a team to figure out those answers together. And if it's not the answer and it's not the solution and we get it wrong, okay, we go back to the drawing board together as a team and we figure it out. I think that's the culture and environment we should create. But the podcasts and the webinars you just mentioned are a classic of what we spoke around before of like research contradicting research, right? Brené Brown tells you to go out there as a leader and be authentic and be vulnerable and show the world who you are and, be in the arena and give it everything you've got with blood, sweat, and tears that you've given a go, right? And then you've got some FBI person like telling you, "Oh, don't do that. That's absolutely not what you should do. You should cover it up and pretend to be someone else." So there you go straight away. Like, which one do you believe and which one do you go with? And I certainly know the one I'd rather go with is totally in my personality to be me, be authentic, show everybody I'm giving 100% and yeah, getting it wrong. Um, but yeah, I think it's really difficult. And I do think football is so judgmental. And because the results we want them thick and fast, and you're in trouble if you don't get them thick and fast, I think that causes a little bit of this holding back. But I also am a big believer of like players see through that. Players see through when you're not being yourself and you're not being authentic, and I think people appreciate it more when you are honest and you're true to yourself and you set the standard of allowing people to be themselves. So, yeah, but it's an interesting, topic.
When you went to England from Newcastle and you replaced one iconic badge with, I get some people from Northern Ireland yelling at me first, with another iconic badge with the three lions. Did you feel anything with your home country on the shirt or on the tracksuit is going to add an element of emotion and add an element of pressure? And did you feel that there when you walked into those environments? Did you feel a there's pressure now to win at the national level, or how did you deal with that if there was?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think I did, well, I don't think, I know I did at the very start. And it was more so Not necessarily the pressure of the three lions on my chest, but more I felt like I needed to know everything. And like at Newcastle United in the academy, we were responsible for like one team or one or two staff members, and then all your other departments led their own staff. You go to England as a head coach, all of a sudden you're leading all those departments, and they all want decisions from you. And I mentioned it before. If you're now managing a doctor on camp, a physio, a physical performance coach, and these are areas I don't have degrees in medical school or in physical performance, and I felt out of my depth. I felt like I don't know enough here. I'm out of my depth and I'm not clever enough to do this job. So I never felt the pressure of winning. I don't think England put that pressure on me of winning. But I felt the pressure of, wow, you have to be really knowledgeable to do this. And I don't think I'm clever enough. Um, and I remember, Gary, like one of the first weeks in that England role, after a training session, I stayed on the pitch to do some running, and I had to fight back the tears because I just thought, "I can't do this. I don't think I'm good enough to do this job." Um, and I think that's the bit we don't talk about as coaches, right? I mean, we're talking about being vulnerable here. Here I am admitting that I was felt well out of my depth. And I mean, roll on 3.5 years later, it was okay. I managed. But certainly at the start, I felt the pressure of having to be really knowledgeable. I never feel pressure around winning, or I don't get nervous for games as a coach. I did as a player, but not as a coach. And I think purely the reason for that is I am so highly critical of myself. I don't believe anybody can put any more pressure on me than I do already put on myself. So I'm kind of comfortable with that piece. And back then, people didn't know I was, like, struggling or doubting myself either, because 'cause I'm pretty good at hiding that stuff. But I think, yeah, I think it's certainly there is a pressure in every coaching job, from grassroots level to youth pathway in a club, to youth pathway at international, and then international senior. I feel like we as coaches put the pressure on ourselves regardless of where we're at.
That's fascinating. The confidence around decision making, and again, in my experience, what the experience of as you get more aware as a coach and more information as a coach, you start second guessing decisions and maybe a little bit more critical of. Then all of a sudden, oh, I should have known that, or I should have spotted that. Um, but it's very, very difficult at the time, especially like you mentioned there about medical information, and you never think that until you go into elite environments that doctors are kind of coming to the coach and giving you all the information, or medical staff, and then there's always a piece where it's almost the coach's decision, and that's still.
Yeah, 100%. But I think there's nothing wrong with saying, "I don't understand that. Can you explain it to me?" And I don't think enough I think a lot of coaches feel like they need to pretend they do understand it, even if they don't. And I mean, I'm not that person. I ask a lot of questions. I'm a very curious person. And if I don't understand something, I have no problem with say I'm comfortable enough within myself to say, "I don't understand that. Can you explain that to me? I don't know what that means." Um, but I think I think it's really hard to do that. And I think it does leave you vulnerable. Like, I think it leaves me vulnerable if people then have an opinion, "Oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about." Um, but I just think there's so much to learn, and I think we never stop learning, right? And I think there's like the classic saying of like the more you learn, the less you feel like you know, or something along those lines. And that's certainly how I feel, and I think we all feel as coaches. Um, but I think we should all keep striving to learn, and I think the world of football, we do need to have an understanding in every corner now, in every aspect. It's the holistic. We talk about the holistic player, right? I think as a coach, you have to have an understanding. Like, I'm not being naive here to say, well, I don't know anything about the medical department, or I don't know anything about the physical components of a football player. Of course I do. You've got to have an understanding in all these areas. I guess what I'm saying is you don't have to be an expert in it, because you've got experts that are there to help you with that. But you certainly need to have an understanding. And I think that I always remember Dan Ashworth spoke around this on a podcast, around almost like the wheel on a ship where you have the forks coming off it, and he sees himself as, I think he was technical director at the time. It's like he sees himself just in the middle of that. And all the folks that come off it are the different departments. There's the medical, there's the technical team, there's the physical performance team. And I guess that's how I see it as a coach. It's like we sit in the middle and we have to have an understanding of all those different areas that go on around us, because ultimately that's how we can help players better if we have a full understanding of the picture. Um, so yeah, I think we need to have an understanding in all areas, but we also need to be comfortable that we don't know everything.
Hello, coaches. We will take a quick break here. Thank you so much for all the support on Modern Soccer Coach. If you enjoy the content, step one, please make sure you like, please make sure you subscribe. If you're listening to this on the audio podcast, please do a review. Take the time to do a quick review on Spotify or Apple or wherever it is you listen to your podcast. And then, second of all, if you want to go one step further and get more Modern Soccer Coach members only content, please check out our Insider platform that is now available. It is an insider platform that includes all the webinars we've done on Modern Soccer Coach over the years. You can watch them on demand. You can also get tons of session resources that library is building out every single week as we upload exclusive members only content. And then finally, of course, we have the WhatsApp group where we upload some session ideas during the week and then also communicate with our members on any topics they want covered on the Modern Soccer Coach Insider. So we try to get the community voice on the content produced and also try and support in whatever ways we can. Please check that out. It's only $10 a month. It's a 1 year subscription. It would mean a lot if you enjoy the work and you want more of the content. I'll also put Natalie's information below on our padlock pad. Please check that out as well. Natalie's doing some outstanding work, as you're hearing in this podcast. So please check that out. Thank you so much for the support. Back to the interview. Gareth Southgate said at that event last week that he had so many media commitments in England that he spent more time doing media than he did with his players or training. And I thought it was really interesting where again, like not everyone is doing the level of media for that type of job, but everyone is being dragged at certain like every meeting you have with a different member of staff is an hour that you're not doing like the amount again common coach kind of not coach rant is that it's 4 o'clock today and I haven't even done anything about football. Like you hear that quite a lot. How much is that important as you're trying to build out and manage your time with all these different dynamics?
Yeah, I think it's so true. Of we get pulled in all sorts of different directions now as coaches, that I think we're getting further and further away from the football, which is difficult, right? Because that's the whole reason we got involved in this, was because we love football and we love helping players. And now all of a sudden we're being pulled away into different areas, which means we're further away from that. And I think there's a real benefit to that of is you learn many different skill sets. And I think certainly in my career, that's something that I'm grateful for. My time with England, I learned so many different skill sets, how to manage people, how to manage staff, how to manage media, how to look at a schedule and what flights are best and what training schedules best, and how to deal with the jet lag strategies. And you learn all these different things, which is brilliant. But you do end up away from the football and watching football games and watching football players, which is one of the reasons I moved to assistant coach for Canada now. Is I want to just concentrate a little bit more on the football and not be pulled in all sorts of directions. But I think that's another thing that's really difficult. And I think we as coaches need to own it ourselves and make sure we're bringing ourselves back to the football and make sure that we are prioritizing and saying no. I got to a point where I started blocking things out my calendar so people couldn't put meetings in, because I was like, this is going to be the time I'm going to sit down and watch some games of football. And I'm not going to let anybody put a meeting in the way of that. Otherwise, you end up prioritizing the wrong things, I think.
Your work at Newcastle, obviously elite level player development, and then in England, quite seems to be quite consistent. Just a little bit of an older bracket, but seems to be a development focused job. When you're now at senior players, where players are coming from different environments, and you've got short training camps and tournaments. How much of your work at Newcastle, that kind of area, have you taken and still use or has shaped you to work with senior players, or how has development changed as players get older?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I don't I don't see it as a big change. And I used to say this when people used to ask what's it like going from the men's game to the women's game. Everybody asked that question, what's it like going from working with boys to working with girls? And I always had the same answer of it's not much different. You're just working with people that are trying to be the best they can be and trying to reach the top of the game, right? And that's still the way I see it going from youth to seniors, like going from England under 17s to Canada seniors. You're still just working with people that are trying to be the very best. And of course, there's some differences in terms of the environment and in terms of their mindset, maturity, their experiences, their backgrounds. There's definitely differences, but the way I see it is those individuals, even at senior level, like they just want to be better. They want to be playing more minutes. They want to win more trophies. They want to go as far as they can in their careers. And that was the same with the 10-year-olds or the 14-year-olds or the 16-year-olds throughout Newcastle and in England. They want to be the best they can be and reach the very top. So I think there's a lot of similarities. I think my time at Newcastle United is absolutely the foundation of me as a coach. I spent 8 years in a men's academy working with players right across the spectrum from under 10s to under 18s. Um, and I think I learned so much in that time, so much about how to manage staff, how to manage myself, how to be on the grass every single day, how to maximize player development because in that space, we're trying to get one player into the first team, right? Whereas now at seniors, we're trying to win trophies, win a World Cup. Um, but I learned so much in that time that I think are tools of the trade, if you like, that will stay with me forever. And I want to keep learning. I still got loads to learn, which is the bit that really excites me. But I think there's a lot of crossover, regardless of whether it's youth or seniors or boys or girls.
The England FA, obviously with the DNA and what's come through that over the last, I don't know how long that's been, 10, 15 years, whatever it's been like it doesn't probably get the credit it deserves because we are so results focused, but seems to have built, outside looking in, an incredible foundation, men's and women's, on both sides with the environment there. But there also seems to be something that I talk about a lot with coaches over here in North America. I feel as if we don't really have as much of a, I don't know if it's passion or if it's promoted or amplified, but professional development seems to be really a big thing in England, and both at professional level and at the FA. Would you agree that is that me? Is that a bias from my, or is there a real emphasis on that when you're in those environments to get better and see other places?
I think there is certain programs in place and certain aspects set by the FA or by the Premier League. I know I done a course with the Premier League that helped me at my time with Newcastle United to really focus on my professional development. But I also think there's a gap in this of I think coaching courses and programs can only prepare you so much. And I think there's still a lot of the football world that maybe isn't spoken about or you feel you can't talk about because you feel like you're being judged, which is similar to what we spoke around before. So I think we're in a better space of terms of professional development and we encourage it from coaches and there's programs in place to help that. But I do still think we've got a long way to go with it.
Yeah, that brings us along nicely. So, is that the problem that you're trying to solve, or what you're trying to provide with your coach and support work? Is that you do see a gap in coach development? That maybe there's not a space for that because you can't go on social media in a community and say, "Hey, listen, I'm struggling with this," unless you really want to feel bad about yourself and wait 10 minutes to see what the response is. So, was that the kind of inspiration behind building the coach support out with the paddle up pad?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, I've had a number of mentors in my time. I don't really like the word mentors because I think it's thrown about a lot nowadays. Um, and I think you're like given mentors who you haven't picked. And I think that's really difficult too. That's a whole different conversation. But I think I've had mentors who I would class as friends who I go to where I feel like I'm not being judged and I can speak openly and freely with this person who has great experience in the football world and has lived and breathed it and been there, done that, and I trust with my life, and they've really helped me throughout so much of my career that I guess I want to try and be that person for others. And I do think there's a gap. I think coaching courses, you go on a coaching course, you get given a mentor or a tutor or whatever they want to call them, and they support you during your time on the course. They tick the box at the end to say, great, you're good to go in the football world now and you're at the next level. And you get thrown back into it and you're expected to deal with it and deal with all sorts of things that coaching courses just do not prepare you for. And you can't reach out on social media for some of that stuff, right? Like your assistant coach is being an absolute pain or contradicting everything you do or being really challenging. You can't put a post on, X saying my assistant coach has been a disaster. Can anybody help? Like that's not you can't do that. Or if you did, I don't know how it would go down. So I guess for me, the whole point of my coach support program, which is like a mentoring program, but just avoiding the word mentoring, it's around me really wanting to help individuals and really like sharing my experiences and my stories with them, but not giving them the answers because everybody's different and everybody deals with life in different ways. And asking them questions to think about things. And I guess the whole point of the program is to make it really bespoke to you and to that individual. So some individuals I'm working with, they just want help with sessions and practice design, and that's fine. Others want help with dealing with assistant coaches or challenging players. Um, some just want to talk about their life and everything that's going on outside of the pitch that's affecting their work on the pitch. So yeah, I'm trying to bridge the gap of yeah, I think I posted about this. I think you said at the start of like let's talk about the things you don't talk about in a coaching course and you don't get help with, and we can do it in a non-judgmental way. Because I think football is so judgmental. It's hard to find the people that you can trust and be yourself to and be open and honest and vulnerable with that can actually help. And I'm trying to be that person, but I'm also still in the thick of it myself and I'm still trying to navigate through it myself. So I feel like it's nice to do that with other people and figure out the football roller coaster together.
Yeah, but I think that's actually another massive strength to it is the fact that you're in the trenches yourself at the same time going through it because where you're, well, I'm working through this at the minute. I think like that's a great conversation. Well, actually, at the minute I'm doing this, and that can lead to another conversation off that. Um, Something that I've I've said this. I don't know what podcast it was. I was talking to someone on, but I was talking about feedback as a coach and something I only thought this like about 5 years ago. It was too late at that stage. I reckon my first 10 to 15 years as a college coach, I got no feedback from anyone being, I done coaching licenses and got feedback. Back then it was a little bit more, hey, 3 points, did you get in and out? And did the session look like a session? So like what was that feedback worth? But all my feedback from my immediate boss at college was all genuine and it was all relevant, but it was all based around a non-football person giving me feedback on my budget management or on my squad size, not necessarily all the things that we've talked about, all these challenges. Like, I think you do need someone who is experienced in dealing with these things at the same time to be like, okay, have you looked at this? Have you thought about this here? Because normally that's where the wheel starts spinning. How do you balance between feedback and giving people the space to work through it, if that makes any sense?
It does make sense, and I think the answer is really difficult. Um, because I think feedback is it's a hot topic, right? And we talk about it a lot as coaches, and we say, "Oh, you should get feedback. You should ask for feedback." We should give feedback to players. And so I think it's a bit of a buzzword, but I think actually doing it is really difficult. Um, and receiving it, I think, is even more difficult. So I think it's a classic, isn't it? As coaches, we tell everybody feedback's good, but then when we get it ourselves, it doesn't really land very well. We don't really like it. And it's the same with that when we tell players to make mistakes or make mistakes, be comfortable with mistakes. It's how we learn. And then we as coaches make a mistake and we hate it. We hate the feeling of mistakes because they don't feel good. But we know we learn from them, but they're not nice. And I think that's the same with feedback is we have to ask for it and we want it and we need it. It's really hard to receive. And I think it's for me, and this is like I mean this in a really respectful way, but if you don't respect somebody and you don't think they're good in their field or you don't respect them or like you just don't have that respect there or that relationship there, then I'm not too bothered about your feedback. And that's like a really honest thing for me to say. So I think the relationship with who you ask for the feedback off is super important. I think you have to trust them. You have to trust what they say is going to help you. Um, and it's the classic like nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent, right? Like that's one of my favorite quotes because so many people can have an opinion on things and you have to pick and choose really wisely what you want to listen to. But you also have to be really open-minded. That's not saying you just shut everybody's feedback down because you're like, "Oh, well, they're wrong," because there could be some real value in that feedback. But I think the relationship you have with that person is super, super important. I think there has to be a level of respect and trust and honesty there for the feedback to land. And I think in regards to your question, I think there's a real balance of just being straight up and giving them what you think and just probing them and asking them questions and getting themselves to think. Because sometimes they'll find themselves leading the way to the answer or the feedback they need without you having to say anything. And I think that's more powerful than you just giving it straight up.
Yeah, but you're right. Very, very difficult. And I actually never thought of that you don't really choose your mentor. I didn't think it until you said it there, but it's true. You're kind of at the mercy of luck in a lot of part of it because you can't really get that. But someone was telling me yesterday, just yesterday, someone was telling me about a coach, educator who was working with them and talked really highly of like how much they helped them. But there was part of me was thinking that at the end of it, I'm like, I wonder does that then create a reliance where that person actually goes and you're holding a periodization chart that you both built together and it goes into the real world and instead of doing what you thought it was, it doesn't really land, you know?
And yeah, I think that's the important bit around mentoring. And certainly the bit with my like coach support is the bit that I think about is we can't give everybody all the answers and we can't rescue them. I read like a great article many, many years ago about rescuing players if they can't do something. Or I don't know, if you put a condition on a practice two touch and they can't do it and you quickly jump in and go, oh, okay, you can have more touches because they don't look like they're very good at it. And like you've rescued them straight away. So how much do you let them struggle and how much do you rescue them early? And I think there's a real skill and an art in deciding when to rescue them and almost watching them struggle a little bit because that's gonna be more powerful for them to figure it out. Um, but yeah, it's a real bugbear of mine with mentors. It's like it's the latest thing and I sound contradictory considering I've just launched a program on it, but at least people get to pick me and they're not being forced upon having me. And I think some coaching courses do that, some organizations do that where they say, "Right, we've got you a mentor, here's your mentor." And you have this meeting with a mentor, and in the first meeting, they're saying, "You can trust me, you can talk to me about anything." And I think, "Well, I can't because I don't even know you. So why would I trust you with my life and come and talk to you like a therapist when I have no idea who you're reporting to? I don't know what you're writing down. I don't know what you're logging. You're making me to talk through this contractual information, and it feels so formal that I've got my guard up and I'm being judged." So for me, that's not a mentor. I pick and choose my mentors, and my mentors are friends that I know can make me better and can speak to me openly and honestly, and I know that I can have a conversation with them that will go no further. And that's the type of mentor I want to be. I don't want it to be a formal tick box exercise where I'm reporting back to an organization saying, yeah, they've done 6 sessions with me now, they're good to go. That's absolutely not what I'm going after because I don't believe in it.
Yeah, God, we could go down a road of because that's how therapy's going today, Natalie. Like that's how, the world of we're coming out of COVID where it's um everyone's moved to medical and therapy has moved to online, which is understandable. But you can see that the space is going towards, well, you're just trying to crunch numbers out of that there. It's a business. I won't say that there's a lot of commercials on it these days that you see, and I'm listening to it in podcasts. I'm like, yeah, that's just a money maker. That's not actually trying to help people.
Yeah. And I think that is the worrying part. And that's the part where how do people differentiate between which people are in it for the right reasons and which people are in it for the money? And I think for me, like I said before, like I'm still in the thick of it. I'm still trying to navigate through the football roller coaster myself. And I always say I'm a football coach because I love football. I always have. My dad would kill me if I didn't from being a young age. But I love helping people and I'm genuinely interested in people. I love hearing people's stories, people's backgrounds, and I love the thought of being able to help them or play a part in that story. So that's my reasons for this coach support program is I think coaching courses aren't doing enough to support the human and the person without it being in a formal tick box way. And I genuinely want to help people. And if I can help people in the football world at any level and play a very small part in their journey, then I feel like that's my purpose and my passion. And that's what I get from that. Um, so yeah, that's the idea behind it. Of I think there's a real yeah, I think we can bridge the gap with helping coaches a bit more than what we do.
Brilliant, brilliant. This is fantastic. Last couple for you. You're bound to get coached. There seems to be coaches today who are a little bit out. I talked about that pathway that looks as if it's attainable today. Like your pathway, for example. Like a lot of people would go, God, I want to do that. Actually, that sounds really. All three of your like Newcastle, England, Canada. Yeah, I'll have a bit of that there. Um, and I think sometimes the reality of coaching is that, you know, I don't know if there is actually a ABC route to get into these jobs. A lot of things you got to go through. I mean, how would you advise someone who is coming to you as a young coach and saying, "Listen, in 5, 10 years, I want to be at X league as a head coach or an assistant coach, professional level. Let's make it happen."
Yeah, that's a big question. I think the thing that springs to mind here is that it's almost like the Instagram life, right? Of like you see people in those positions and you think, "Oh, I want to do that." Or you see the person with the red Ferrari on Instagram and the designer handbag and you think, "Oh, well, I want that. That looks." And the truth is it's not easy, right? But to get to where people are at the top and whatever the top is for you, because I think that's different for everybody, it contains a lot of hard work and blood, sweat, and tears. Tears that I've told you about before on the football pitch and not thinking I'm good enough. And I think that's the bit that people misunderstand these days is they see these titles, they see these journeys, they think they're really smooth. And actually they're not smooth at all. Um, like I've had I worked relentless to get to where I am, and I still do work relentless because I know if I take the foot off the gas, somebody overtakes you. Um, and people can see that smooth journey, Newcastle United, England, Canada. They don't see the Saturday mornings where I refereed in the morning and then I walked to JD Sports and worked a full day in JD and then got on a minibus on Sunday morning and went and played for Newcastle Women and ran a women's football academy and a county team whilst doing a university degree and whilst doing ACL rehab. And they don't see all of that bit. They just see the titles at the end of it. And they don't see the tears and the doubt and the, I don't know, disputes between members of staff and the people that try to knock you down and hold you back. And we don't see that bit because we don't post about that bit, right? We keep that bit quiet. But that's the reality is that it's not smooth and it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of this relentlessness of not taking your foot off the gas and of keep pushing yourself every single day to try and get to where you want to be. So yeah, my advice to young coaches just starting out is like keep learning as much as possible. Go to different environments, watch different cultures, um, and know and understand that it's not going to be smooth. You don't just get to the top by chance or by luck. It's a lot of hard work and perseverance and discipline.
Again, another probably bad question, but something I have to ask whenever we're talking about like this authenticity piece, and then also talking about the numbers of like the way you talked about before with the sports science, the data, the psychology. Do you think football in 5 to 10 years is going to move like elite coaching is going to move more towards specialization, or do you think the generalist is actually going to come back a little bit in this game?
Good question. I'm not sure. I think we are becoming more specialized. I think individual development's getting bigger now. And I'm a big believer in that. I think obviously I spent a lot of my time in Newcastle United, which was around individual development. And I do think if you help individuals get better, the team becomes better. And therefore you get results and you win. But I genuinely think it works in that order. So I do think it's become specialized. I think there's a lot of different coaches coming in now for different areas. But I still feel very strongly that we as coaches need to have an understanding in all areas. Like a lot of books that I read in my time it are around psychology or self-help are about how to deal with humans. Um, because I think that is key. And I always used to say to my staff at England, is that I don't know if you've ever heard of the rule 167, right? So I heard this many, many years ago. And it was the basic idea of it was there's 168 hours in a week. And 1 hour sending a player to the psychologist is not going to fix a player. So it's our job, it's all of our jobs to be psychologists and to help that player every hour of the week. So in those other 167 hours, what are we doing to help that player be psychologically better? Because you can't just send them to a department for 1 hour and expect that that's going to fix them, right? So, and I'm a massive believer in that of like, we have to have a level of understanding and expertise and coaching in all different areas. Like we need to be psychologists. We need to have an understanding in sports science and how our practices can help their physical capability within a game. And we need to understand them technically and tactically and how we can help them. So that there's like all sorts of different areas that we need to understand and know about. Um, and I do think we're getting specialists in to do that and to help with it, which is great. But I still believe as coaches, we've got a part to play in that as well.
Ah, that's a brilliant answer. Brilliant answer. Okay, last one for you. There's obviously going to be coaches listening to this and saying, "Yeah, I'm going to reach out to Natalie as soon as Gary tells us how to do it, or Natalie tells us how to do it." So two questions. One, how do they get in contact? How do they get on board? But two, which I'm looking at going like Canada role, travel, trying to get you into some other projects. There's only so much hours of a day. I mean, what are you capping this thing at?
Okay, I'll go with the first answer first. So the way that people can access my coach support program is through the Padlock Pad website, so padlockpad.com. And then there's a tab around coach support, and you click find out more. It generates an email that sends it directly to me, and then I get back to you with some information. So that's how that works. That's nice and straightforward. The other one, I do not know. Honestly, my family don't understand this either. They have to like check where I am in the world and what when I'm not in meetings. But I love to learn, and the whole point of the Padlock Pad platform is like I'm obsessed with people reaching their potential or getting closer to reaching their potential. Because what is your potential, right? Who knows? But just like maximizing that potential, and I feel like I live and breathe that every day. It's like I want to be the very best I possibly can be. And I want to, look back and think. I don't want to think, oh, I wasted my talent, or not that I believe I have talent. I think you work hard to get better. But that's a different topic. But yeah, I just yeah, I have this relentlessness of just I just want to keep getting better and I want to learn. I love learning. Um, and that's what I enjoy doing. My job is my hobby, and I'm very, very fortunate to be living my dream and living my hobby. So therefore, I maximize that. So, in answer to your question, I don't know what work life balance is. I'm still trying to figure that out. Um, but I'm enjoying the journey, so that's good.
Outstanding. Natalie, absolutely brilliant. We will put all the links below, and I'm sure you're going to get quite a few emails after this. So let's get you on again when you get some time. This has been amazing. Thank you so much. Keep up the great work.
Thanks, Gary. Cheers.